But without further ado, we are about to talk about physicians' perspective on maintenance of certification. I'll give a brief introduction and say that I think a lot of people will see that and say, oh, those doctors don't want to do what they need to do for their education. I do not know a single doctor, myself included, who does not believe in rigorous self-education and rigorous education furthering. We want to do the best for our patients every day. But the maintenance of certification is not that. And we're about to hear from Dr. Westby Fisher, a cardiologist from Chicago, and Dr. Chuck Kroll, who was also originally from Chicago, who is a CPA. Both of them have been investigating this for several years, and they tell me, at least Chuck Kroll tells me, that he, being from Chicago, can smell deep dish pizza and corruption from a mile away. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Dr. Westby Fisher and Charles Kroll. I must add that Westby and I are co-founders of Practicing Physicians of America.
Now, if I can just figure out where the mouse is and where things are, we'll get going here. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can open my... this is a self-run organization. This is a bunch of doctors trying to get together to tell our story, the part that no one's ever heard. And so I would like to take a moment and just say there's a lot of people that have come together in a very short period of time, but there is a huge tidal wave of practicing physicians who are extremely disenchanted with where we are right now today. And it was that motivation, and probably this issue that I'm going to review today, that has kind of solidified physicians across America to come together and actually let people know what's really going on. And I'm going to tell my story because I think it's important. I'm a practicing cardiac electrophysiologist, about as subspecialized as you can become. I've gone through this ordeal of credentialing because I believe that it's important that we show our patients that we are capable of doing what we're supposed to be doing. But I do not believe that re-credentialing again and again and again to prove that we can still keep doing what we're doing is in anyone's best interest. And in fact, except for the people who created this program. And I'm going to show you the data that I have uncovered along with Chuck Kroll, a forensic accountant, to begin to ask that this entire physician credentialing system called maintenance of certification be formally investigated by Congress and the Internal Revenue Service. Now, to begin to frame this story, I should say that there are a lot of really good people who have done a lot to try and improve the quality of medical education in the United States. And a lot of it came from 1906, way back in the day when we realized that healthcare in America was a very unorganized thing to be able to provide. And cities needed to improve the quality of medical schools. And so Congress actually asked that they begin to form groups to credential physicians so that we can make sure that they were capable of doing what the public expected of a physician. Over the years, this gigantic accrediting cartel, if you will, has come together called the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education. And I have listed here the 2014 cumulative assets of this group of individual organizations that have all come together under this umbrella, with the exception of the one on the far right. So the AMA has $662 million. And they get that not from advocating for physicians, but for many special interests. Only 15% of practicing physicians actually contribute to the AMA. The American Hospital Association has their lobbyists. The AAMC, which is the Association of American Medical Colleges, has theirs, $452 million. The National Board of Medical Examiners, who examines all the medical students, has $52 million, and so on and so forth. And the key here is that this is a big money operation. And if you can make it even more big, then hallelujah. So at the far right of this screen is the American Board of Medical Specialties, which contains 24 subsequent member boards beneath it, and collectively, they are worth $1 billion in assets right now. And we should understand that the American Board of Internal Medicine, about whom I'm going to be speaking today, is the largest member board of the American Board of Medical Specialties and is responsible for credentialing 1/4 of all U.S. physicians. Now, let's talk about my certification story. In 1936, the ABIM was created. And when they came out with this credentialing, it was really to make sure that all the hospitals were training their physicians, that if you really wanted to say you're a really good doctor, you would take this test and you would use it as a marketing tool for your patients, because we were all working independently at that time. And so, but what ended up happening is these people in 1960 decided to change their bylaws so they could pay the board members of the American Board of Internal Medicine a lot of money. And those guys were enjoying the sweet life. In fact, in 1969, the president and chairman of the ABIM took care of a whopping 1 patient while he served as the ABIM. Okay? So what happened because of that, they started running out of money. They couldn't credential enough people to feed the trough. And so they went ahead and changed the bylaws yet again. And it was interesting that so many people came together saying, we need to keep up with our education, and we're going to be the ones who will help you do that. But in order to do that, they changed the philosophy of becoming an excellent physician to, you're going to need this just to be an adequate physician. And that, unfortunately, that was for all the physicians who were out there, and they were, unfortunately, targeting. They didn't do this to the people. They only started it for if you got credentialed after 1990. So all the younger physicians were affected by this, but the old grandfathers weren't, because if the grandfathers had been affected by this change in the rules, it would have been Armageddon at the point and never have happened. And so right at the beginning, we have age discrimination against our youngest and most vulnerable physicians, which was the perfect ploy to institute this plan. And I bridged the gap. My first certification was in 1989, before this rule went into effect. And unfortunately, as I went through my training and had to do cardiovascular disease, cardiac electrophysiologist, I got caught because I had those certifications after that 1990 timeline, and therefore had to go on and recertify every 10 years, not in 1, but 2 subspecialties for many, many thousands of dollars every 10 years. And it was kind of like any one of us having to go back to college, okay, and pay your college $3,000 just so you could take your final exam and keep doing your job today. That is exactly what this is like. Now, my idea of a physician quality should be, the patients, they look at how many years experience you have. Of course, this didn't have anything to do with how many years experience you have. You have to be a good communicator, you have to be knowledgeable, constantly learning, empathic, and have surgical dexterity. The ABIM and their ABMS definition thought that medicine was best learned on a computer, that we memorize well, that we pay $23,000 every 10 years on average for their general internist, and are willing to be coerced into signing a legal contract promising secrecy. And that we would accept the old database questions as gospel. So we're taking a database of questions that we have to keep redoing all the time, so it's hardly new. And finally, we couldn't ask questions. We just had to show the public that we could pass a test, and therefore we're a quality doctor. Now, the cost analysis of mock recertification has been done formally. $23,607 for the average internist. Guys like me, this might cost us, because we have to leave work, almost $100,000 every 10 years. Cumulatively, mock costs $5.7 billion to the healthcare system every 10 years from lost work of physicians who are away studying for this program. And it takes 32.7 million physician hours are spent on this program alone in the United States annually. There is no proof, and I will re-emphasize this, on prospective randomized studies that this does anything to improve quality or reduce admissions in hospitals in several well-respected journals that have studied this endeavor. So where does all this money go? Well, maintenance of certification alone is 44% of the revenue that the American Board of Internal Medicine receives. Certification, the initial certification, is 54%. And of course, the expenses, kind of interesting. They're a lot bigger than the revenue. Why is that? When we're paying $54.5 million a year to do this certification. Well, when you start looking into things in 1998, as I have, you find that the American Board of Internal Medicine bylaws changed in 1998 to allow unlimited conflicts of interest. You also find that the American Board of Internal Medicine in 1990 on the internet announced their brand new American Board of Internal Medicine Foundation. And the foundation at that time, this is the web page that I grabbed on May 23rd, 2015, was a not-for-profit foundation established by the ABIM in 1999, and I want you to remember that, okay, to improve healthcare through advancement of medical professionalism. That sounds pretty good. And they're going to continually define medical professionalism. However, and even the IRS, they reported to, was formed in 1999 in the state of Iowa, so they say. When in actuality, they were formed 10 years before that in Pennsylvania. So right away, we're seeing false reporting on tax forms. And if that's the case, they're covering something up. And when I pulled the tax form from 1999 and I looked at it, they already had $59,618,428 in their bank account. Where did that come from? The year they were created. We should ask that question, shouldn't we? What we've now found is that that money came from our certification fees. Because the ABIM, with the embarrassment of my one personal blog, had to recant and say that they transferred $55 million of ours from 1989 to 1999 to create their foundation, without ever disclosing that to practicing physicians. And then we have so where's all this money going? Okay, well, here's the ABIM Foundation's tax forms, and the interesting word here is research. They're doing research for our good. Okay, but this is an extremely important issue. And even when we sign in, this is my screenshot when I'm logging in, they're identifying similar types of practices for research purposes. This type of research has no impact on physician certification, but can be valuable in understanding how to improve healthcare. Which is a lot of saying they have no clue what they're doing, they're taking our money. Because when we read about research and what's required of research, okay, the Belmont report is very clear that when there's research conducted on individuals, they have to know what that research is, and they have to sign an informed consent. And physicians are coerced into joining this program because we have to now, and we have to sign a form that says we don't have to sign informed consent because they know what's best for us. But I would argue the respect for persons, the idea of that research is first and foremost meant to be a beneficent undertaking and has justice for all those who are studied, has been egregiously violated by this organization. And then we found in 2007, December 2007, I think what they were really doing is investment research, because they bought themselves a $2.3 million condo, complete with a chauffeur-driven Mercedes S-Class town car on our nickel for certification fees. That had a concierge, beautiful building, was one of the most expensive properties in Philadelphia at the time. Really what this was a social justice experiment on physicians who were the subjects. Because when I asked Lois Nora of the American Board of Medical Specialties, when I presented this presentation before the AMA House of Delegates meeting, have you ever studied what happens to physicians who fail? She could not answer that question because it's never been studied. What happens to patient care and patient access when they lose their physician whose certifications are withdrawn and he can no longer practice medicine? Never studied, and there's no plans to do so. There are numerous corporate and government conflicts of interest. It's never been scrutinized. No oversight of this entire cartel of individuals certifying physicians. And how is the recertification data to be sold, protected, utilized? It's never disclosed. We never hear anything about what they're really doing. And after all the work studying this organization for almost 3.5 years, this is a brief summary of the multiple conflicts of interest. But the one that I would like to say is that in the upper right-hand corner is the National Committee of Quality Assurance, who sets the entire quality standards for the nation's hospitals and creates the quality standards. And they are funded, and they have personnel from the American Board of Internal Medicine Foundation, whose tax forms have been fraudulently filed, in my estimation. They also feed that information and get those quality things from the National Quality Forum. And Christine Cassell was the president and CEO of the American Board of Internal Medicine for over 10 years, earning $10.88 million in that capacity, much of which was money that she received from Kaiser Hospital Group and Premier Incorporated, one of the largest hospital procurement agencies in the country. She also received stock, and Premier, who she worked for, shortly after she left ABIM, bought a little-known company called CE City for $400 million. And all they do is practice improvement module, survey, collection, data, analysis. So when we look at the fact they also have been doing lobbying, but they kind of didn't, they put no on their tax forms, when in fact, when we look them up on Open Secrets, we see that they were lobbying quite heavily in Congress, despite being a 501c3, which is not supposed to lobby Congress. And worst of all, they hired a two-time convicted felon to serve as the director of investigations for over physicians, and probably one of the largest civil liberties violations of a house raid of a course director occurred. And certainly he may have been stealing questions from the American Board of Internal Medicine, but then taking the computers from that doctor's office and then tracking down physicians so they could use strongman tactics to get additional funds from those physicians who were worried they would lose their ability to practice. Over 139 physicians were sued or sanctioned by the ABIM when they were doing this even worse activities on the rest of the practicing physician community. So the questions come, how much antitrust and racketeering is going on with this whole program? And in fact, an antitrust suit was filed in New Jersey by the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons against the ABIM, but wouldn't you know it, because it was moved from New Jersey to the Chicago metro area, the home of the AMA, nothing has been touched in that docket analyzing this information since January of 2015. This is our own court system, which we have to question. And it's not just the ABIM. The American Board of Medical Specialties profits by selling this information of our credentialing to multiple hospital systems around the country and insurance companies. The American Board of Family Medicine owns ABMS Realty, okay? And they basically are profiting after purchasing a $4.2 million office building in Kentucky, right around the corner from their office, and they're running a realty company. And then the American Board of Pediatrics, well, they own a 2.8-acre pond right behind their building, just because it looks really nice, I guess, and didn't think anybody would ever look at what kind of real estate holdings they might have. And several member boards of the American Board of Medical System happen to just own land, which we all know is such a great investment long term. The internet, however, has caused self-destruction of the ABMS product line, which is trademarked, by the way, by the American Board of Medical Specialties. And thanks to the internet and getting the word out from a single blogger, we now need to get back to what's going on. There is no oversight, there is no accountability, and we need to finish up. So who will investigate and stop them? It's the story of the little red hen. We go to the president and CEO of the American Board of Internal Medicine, they say, gee, I'm sorry. We go to the major medical societies and we ask them, well, they're all teaching under this ruse, they don't want to talk about it. We go to the New England Journal of Medicine, the premier medical journal in the Massachusetts Medical Society, and we say, you know, you're not really disclosing all the conflicts here, and I get a note back saying we do not want to talk about this at this time. We've gone to mainstream media. I personally have been talking to some of these organizations. Everybody says this is a physician problem, not a patient problem, and I would argue it most certainly is. So we decided, many of us, I'll do it myself, okay? So first, we created the National Board of Physicians and Surgeons to compete. But wouldn't you know, the insurance companies, who are very happy to have physicians under their thumb, okay, have not authorized this because the National Committee on Quality Assurance insists that ABMS mock certification be the only certification we utilize. State medical societies, however, have mobilized, and they are beginning to enact laws. Biggest one probably in Oklahoma, that does not allow maintenance of certification for any hospital in Oklahoma use it for use of credentialing or anything else for insurance payments. Kentucky has also done so, Michigan has done so, and with many more to come. And it is through this organization that I hope that we can expose the corruption, the tax fraud, the strongman tactics, and the potential interactions of all these things that have really harmed physicians and ultimately their patients.